Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Manna Daily Podcast. Today, I am rejoined with Patreon supporters. They're the ones who basically keep this show going and the page on Instagram. We're basically just doing this because people have questions, people want to learn, and they're not really getting stuff on Sunday or at their churches. So
Yeah.
we're opening this up either for dialogue and readings. Today, I thought we would cover the topic of Maccabees and Judas, how these two things connect, and how it might give a little bit new insights to how you're reading the New Testament. Now, do any of you or have any of you ever watched the Chosen series?
Hmm.
No.
It's got a lot of Jesuit ties, and there's some things where I'm watching it, and again I watch it because people are sending me stuff, and then I'm over here like, ah, gosh, now I gotta go watch this to tell you what not, like. So I'm watching it, and I'm seeing the scene one where Jesus and John are talking about these pagan deities carved on the wall. I think this is like season 4 or 5, wherever it is. I don't know where they're at right now. And I'm going, I don't think Christ would be referring to pagan deities to be making a case, especially when he
Mm.
is the God. Now, granted, as Christians, we can make that comparison because we're saying compare, contrast. This is what we have with Christ. This is what we have with a pagan concept, right? So I don't think they'd be throwing that in there. The other thing that really irked me was when they started having in the series some episodes where they were worshiping the concept of Hanukkah or the Maccabean
Mm.
revolt. Now, personally, why I don't think that Christ would personally be worshiping or partaking in that particular ceremony is because he came to not bring a sword, he came to bring the word. And the fact that they are worshiping the concept of a revolution kind of defeats the whole concept of him coming into Jerusalem riding on a donkey. I'm not here to be a conqueror. So I don't think he'd be kind of promoting and or in a circle. If anything, I think that I would assume, I don't have proof. I think if anything, he would be challenging that concept of like we're going to be doing a different kind of revolution, not that kind.
Mhm.
So it's not going to be like done by force or with the sword. I mean, don't you want to claim your title? I mean, if you're starting to observe this, and the guy's name was Judas Maccabee, the Hammer, and you're Judas Iscariot, probably named after this great revolutionary, and maybe for the last 2 or 3 years, whenever he got recruited in, and you're observing Christ basically saying we're not going to be doing it that way, at a certain point, kind of get a little bit that grinding going on, going, I think you got this wrong. We do need to fight back. We do need to be physical. And maybe they need to rough you around a little bit until you kind of grasp the concept. They're going to be physical with you. Why would you not return that favor? And in essence, betrays Christ, not realizing the extent of where they were going to go. Now, does that make a little bit more sense? But again, open for discussion. Doesn't mean what I just said was right. I would like to, if you guys want to say anything, feel free.
I think that sounds interesting, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because again, I know the show has a lot of Jesuit influence, but at the same time, putting that out there is making viewers still justify the dispensationalism aspect and Hanukkah. And then you're going, well, yeah, that sounds like a great tradition. And
Mhm.
yeah, well, I don't know if it's a great tradition or whether we should be supporting that. Because if we don't know like history, how are we supposed to? Again, it's like what she was just asking pre-show. If it's pagan and I don't understand the concept or practice
Yeah.
of what said paganism believes or why they do what they do, I am just
Mhm.
basically going to be sputtering something saying it's pagan, but I really don't know how to defend and articulate that as an
Yes.
apologist, right? Like
Right.
like Paul, you have a shrine here to the unknown God. Okay, he's got a point. You don't know what he looks like. You have all these other depictions of gods and stuff like that, but you can't depict this particular one. Why is that? There's a flaw. There's a fallacy. I'm calling that out. Why am I able to do that? Because I've studied Torah. I understand now who
Mm.
Christ is, and I'm giving you a counterpoint to consider. Now, did they have an answer that day? No. But did you plant a seed? Yes. And there's probably other
Mm.
people who are listening in going, that is a very interesting question. Right? Thoughts, problems, concerns? Okay, cool. Guess let's try to start towards the top.
Okay.
In conclusion, this is right after talking about how where is that? Talking about the concept that political power has its spies everywhere, This is by Jacques Ellul, Anarchy and Christianity. This is towards the end. It's not the main argument that he's making. He just brings up this history, and I found it very interesting as I was reading it and thought I'd bring it onto the show. Basically, in conclusion, we must look at the end of the Jewish monarchy. Palestine was conquered by the Greeks and then became part of the Seleucid Empire, end of the 3rd century BC. Now, the Seleucids were one of the groups that was an offshoot from Alexander the Great when the 4 generals took over. One of them was a general with the Seleucid connection here. Then came the Maccabean revolt to liberate Judea from Jerusalem. The war of liberation was long and bloody, but success came at 163 BC, so 163 years before Christ, roughly. Many political parties then struggled for power. From a colonial dictatorship, the Jews fell under a Jewish dictatorship, the Hasmonean monarchy, which was not only very corrupt, but characterized by palace intrigues. One king starved his mother to death, another assassinated his brothers. These things made the Jews hostile to this dynasty, and the people were so disgusted that they preferred to appeal to a foreign king to rid them of the Israelite king. The deposition did not succeed, but we have an explanation of the hostility to all political power that prevailed in the 1st century BC. The story of the collapse of Israel's monarchy was not yet at the end. The Romans came on the scene in Palestine in 65 BC. Pompey besieged Jerusalem and finally took it, a horrible massacre following. When Pompey celebrated his triumph at Rome, Aristobulus, the last Hasmonean king, was among his prisoners. An abominable struggle for the succession then began among the leading Jewish families. Obviously, the law of God and the solidarity of faith meant nothing to the leaders. It was Herod, the son of a protege of Caesar, who was appointed governor of Galilee. By the Romans, Herod adopted a harsh policy and restored order in what would become a world of dismal brigandage. He put the main brigand leader to death. Guerrilla attacks on the political authorities had now become pure and simple banditry. His enemies accused him before the Supreme Political Court and the Sanhedrin, which did nothing and had no real power on the ground. That he had usurped this court's prerogative, it alone having the power of life and death. And this isn't the same Herod, by the way, of Christ. This is like a great, great, great grandfather just prior. So probably a generation or two prior to the Herod that goes to kill all the kids. But Herod, who knew that he had Roman support, showed such assurance and arrogance before the Sanhedrin, this is in contrast to Christ, I found interesting, that his timid body did not dare to do anything against him. Herod returned to Jerusalem with an army, but his father intervened to prevent a new war. His power progressively increased. Now, this was just me reading it. Do you see like the complete contrast of Christ? This guy's over here being very boisterous and loud during his trial.
Mm,
Christ is completely silent. This guy is
mm,
returning with an army. Christ is just returning, with his disciples. Complete
mm,
contrast, but it's the similarities being drawn here. I just noticed. In 37 BC, he became the true king of all Palestine in alliance with Rome. A governor ruled with him, but he was not under the governor. He depended directly on the princeps, or the later emperor, of Rome. Equipped with such power, he engaged in considerable political activity. He imposed a tight administration on the whole country with police control. He also began construction. He built whole cities in honor of Augustus and a magnificent temple of Augustus. He was the one of those that spread the emperor cult in the east. He also built strong fortifications at Jerusalem. Finally, in 20 BC, he began building a new temple. As we see, he was elected for the God of Israel. He enlarged the Esplanade, not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, with enormous supporting walls that we still can be seen, one of them being the famous Wailing Wall. Now, again, whether that was the Roman fortress or this was connected with his thing, either way, they're still worshiping the concept of state, going to the Wailing Wall. He also put up a sumptuous structure with ornaments of gold. He thus became known as Herod the Great. But he could engage in this construction program only by imposing heavy taxes and oppressing the people, even to the point of forced labor. Nor should we forget that after him, the country would be delivered up for 150 years of civil war and incomparable devastation. The land was ruined, and there were frequent famines. Violence and terror were the instruments of government, as we can well imagine. The only reality that counted for Herod was the friendship and support of Rome and the emperor. Now, in contrast with God was always trying to establish with his people, I don't want you making alliances with the kingdoms of this earth. Be not like the other nations. And what exactly is Herod doing? He's not leaning on God for support. He's looking to man to back up his reign. Okay. Herod died in AD 4, and a disputed succession gave rise to new civil wars. Rome then seized one part of Herod's kingdom. Finally, one of his sons, Herod Antipas, carried the day and regained part of the kingdom. Antipas led a completely insane life of crime and debauchery. We need to note this if we are to understand what followed. How did the people of Israel react to the rule of Rome? On one side, which was less severe than that of the Jewish crown, and the violence of the Herods on the other. The curious thing is that, except for the book of Daniel, no more writings were recognized by the people and the rabbis as divinely inspired. Up to John the Baptist, there were no more prophets. What we find are two reactions. The one is violent. This unworthy dynasty and the Roman invaders must be chased out of the country. The country, then, was not merely prey to conflicts among its leaders, but it was also ferment due to the activity of guerrilla bands, then called brigands, who fought the royal house in Rome by the usual methods attacks, assassinations of prominent people, etc. This would be where the zealots come into play when you're watching The Chosen, in that particular group. The other reaction, that of the devout, was one of withdrawal from this horrible situation. These pious people established fervent religious communities, avoided secular matters, and devoted themselves solely to prayer and worship. Among them, developed an apocalyptic trend, on one hand prophesizing the end of the world, which had long since been announced. When you see the abomination of desolation standing there, it ought not, how better describe Hasmonean and his Herodonian dynasties. And on the other hand, expecting the coming of God's Messiah, who would set everything in order and reestablish the kingdom of God. In their different ways, both reactions ascribe no value to the state, to political authority, or to the organization of that authority. Just move my sticky. So now Christ comes on the scene. This was the general climate until which Christ was born. The first event that Matthew's gospel records concerning him is not without interest. Herod the Great was still in power. He learned that a child had been born in Bethlehem, and that reports were circulating that this child would be of Israel's Messiah. He realized at once that what trouble this might cause him, and he thus ordered that all the children of 2 years and under in Bethlehem in the vicinity should be killed. The accuracy of this account is irrelevant for my purpose. The important thing is that we have the story, that it was abroad among the people, and the first Christians accepted it. We must not forget that they were used and put it into a text which they regarded as divinely inspired. This shows that their view was of Herod, and behind him of power. This was their first contact with the infant Christ, with political power. I'm not saying that it influenced his later attitude of it, but undoubtedly it left a mark upon his infancy. What I really want to point out here is by means of a series of recorded incidences is not that Christ was an enemy of power, but that he treated it with disdain and did not accord it any authority. In every form, he challenged it radically. He did not use violent methods to destroy it. In recent years, there had been much talk of guerrilla Christ, who the people thought would chase out the Romans. I think that there are two mistakes here. Nothing supports the account of the guerrilla Christ, such as we find, for example, in P. Cardinal, who concludes from the cleansing of the temple and the request of Christ for two swords that his disciples had to stock of arms. A single fact shows how impossible is that theory. Among the disciples were zealots, Simon and Judas, who supported violence, but also collaborators with Rome, Matthew, and the two groups were able to get along well together. Christ never extolled violence. If he was a guerrilla head, the least we can say is that he was a fool. His travels, especially the last journey to Jerusalem, made no tactical sense, and they inevitably led to his arrest. So basically, if this was the case that Christ was a revolutionary figure of violence, he was making very poor tactical decisions. He should have gone up to the hills, should have been hiding out, should have been accruing arms. Nope, doesn't doing any of that. So it's like kind of defeating the purpose that they're wanting to paint here. Another, and even more widespread error, is that all of the Jews were essentially preoccupied with expelling the Roman invaders. Undoubtedly, there was hatred for the Goyim, and a desire to chase out the invaders. The massacres perpetuated by the Romans were constantly remembered. But that was not all. In addition, patriotic Jews could not forget that the kings of Judea had appointed by the Romans and could not remain in power without their support. Hatred of the Romans combined with a desire to be rid of the Herods. Even among the pious sects like the Essenes, there was an expectation of the coming of a mysterious personage who was a teacher of righteousness, would not have political power, but who would give true freedom to the Jewish people by establishing not temporal and not military, but spiritual power. So the whole very concept of Christian nationalism, it's being defeated here because in the wake of the Maccabean revolt, Christ is doing the exact opposite. I would not venture to say that these sects had an anarchist hope, but many of these texts suggest it. When Christ began his public ministry, the Gospels tell the story of his temptation. The devil tempts him 3 times. The important temptation in the context in the last is in Matthew. The enemy takes Christ to a high mountain and shows him all the kingdoms of the world and their glory. I will give you all these things if you will prostrate yourself and worship me. Matthew 4:8 through 9. Now, I think it's Prometheus, whatever it is. It's a Persian concept and a lot of other pagan worlds where you would get down and literally lay your complete body down and kiss the feet of the ruler and or somebody that was in power. That's basically what he was saying for Christ to do. No. I will give you all the power and the glory of these kingdoms, for it has been given to me, and I give it to whom I will. If you then will prostrate yourself before me, it shall all be yours. Luke 4:6 through 7. Again, my concern is not with the facticity of the records, nor with the theological problems. My concern is with the views of the writers, with the personal convictions that they express here. And then we got a couple more pages. It is not unimportant to emphasize, perhaps, the two Gospels were probably written with Christian communities of Greek origin in view, not Jews who were influenced by the hatred to which we referred above. The reference in these texts, then, is no political power in general, all the kingdoms of the world, and not just that of Herod's monarchy. And that extraordinary thing is that according to all these texts are all powers, all the power and the glory of the kingdoms, all that has to do with politics and political authority belongs to the devil. It has all been given to him, and he gives it to whom he wills. Those who hold political power receive it from him and depend upon him. It is astonishing that in the innumerable theological discussions of the legitimacy of political power, no one has ever adduced these texts. This fact is no less important than the fact that Christ rejects the devil's offer. Christ does not say to the devil, "It is not true. You do not have power over kingdoms and states." He does not dispute this claim. He refuses to offer of power because the devil demands that he would fall down before him and worship him. Those in sole point when he says, "You shall worship the Lord your God, and you shall serve him and only him." Matthew 4:10. We may thus say that Christ's immediate followers, and in the first Christian generation political authorities, what we call the state, belonged to the devil, and those who held power received it from him. We have to remember this is when we study the trial of Christ. A further question is why we reference is here made to the devil, the diabolos, in etymological the divider, not a person. The state and politics are thus primary reasons for division. This is the point of the reference of to the devil. We do not have a primitive or simplistic image of an arbitrary designation. What we have is a judgment, which is not the least religious, and which expresses both experience and reflection. This judgment was obviously facilitated by the horrible lacerations caused among the people by the Hasmonean and the Herodian dynasties, and ensuing uprising and civil conflict. However, maybe the first Christian generation was globally hostile to political power and regarded it as bad, no matter what's its orientation or constitutional structures. Now we're going to pause for a second. Any questions? I know that was a lot, but the concept that I think a lot of people don't see when you look at somebody like Peter, obviously he goes into reactionary mode, draws his sword. Christ says, "We're not doing that. My kingdom is not of this world," Peter, right? Go on to bash the Jewish people. Like if we were, my servants would fight. We're not doing that today. We got Judas, right? He goes to the authorities, as it were, religious and state, right? And he's trying to get money. He's basically the first APAC acceptee. Give me money and I'll do what needs to be done, right? I'll compromise my standards of honor in order to get something politically accomplished, whether that is within the church or institution, whether that's within government. The very concept, like I said before, when Christ is asking, "Do you have a coin on you?" The fact that they were able to produce a coin means Christ already won the argument before he even responded, because according to their culture and customs, the religious leaders or Jews in general, we are not supposed to have the coins of Caesar on our person, because Caesar, Augustus, and stuff like that basically means Sator, savior of the world. So the fact that they actually already had that on their person means we are aligned with the institutions of government of this world. And as a religious leader, you guys are supposed to know better that that's not to enter the temple, because that's supposed to be regarded for affairs outside. Oh, so render unto Caesar things that are Caesar, things unto God. Yeah. Focus on spiritual. You're supposed to be spiritual leaders, and the fact that you had it on your person, then you're ready to produce it that fast, tells me everything I need to know. Because one's made in the image of God, which is spiritual. One is made in the image of man, material. And that is what you made your alliance with, was what the state. Does that help anybody to?
I'm
Do you
just
think
taking
that
it all in.
still technically, I guess, applies today then? Is that weird to then bring money into church with you and say in your wallet?
That was actually the first thing that I was thinking. I said, this is kind of a little bit abominable, because in God we trust, but is that God oil? Gold, oil, and drugs? God?
Mm.
How do we accrue this money? Technically, all money is dirty money, because at some point this was in some bad person's pocket at some point, or some transaction, whether it was digital or otherwise, and it all resides within banks. But the thing is, we're using Caesar's currency in order to help the church get along. The thing is, the problem is that 5013 churches, it's you can't insult the state if we have this money. If you have this money, well, wait, so you're aligned with the government. If you were to get a church and you want to be tax exempt, you have to align with what we're saying. Coincidentally enough, Trump just signed something where basically they can't insult him if they want to get tax breaks. I was like, well, that's interesting. Be that as it may. But it's that concept. Yes, I think, if anything, I know it's kind of silly, especially in today's world. But it's like we should almost keep money outside, and if we do have it in, maybe put it in a different area because there's what is, what fellowship does light have with darkness? Yes, it is Caesar's world, and we are, be in the world, not of the world. We are using something, again, even sending money to me to support the ministry. You are using Caesar's currency, or again, the shackles such as we have, but we're using it to go against our enemy. We're not using it for, filthy lucre's sake, which interesting, I was doing the other day, lucrative. It's like, yeah, okay. It's making me a little bit wary about accumulating a mass amount of money because that ends up becoming the main focus of your life.
Do you think that also might kind of alter what he means as far as when he talks about tithing?
Could you give me a more specific passage and or paraphrase quote?
I mean more so like as far as like when they talk about tithing, then should we be tithing money or should it be because if that's basically
I
a
think it's
part
not biblical.
no.
That's all Old Testament. I have two books. You want me to go grab them and get you read off the titles?
Sure.
Okay. Give me 1 second, folks.
Talk amongst yourselves. Um, I know I'm thinking about that's a really good question about the tithing. Like I always thought that it was like just so that you're letting go of this currency that the world like reveres so much or something. Like
Yeah.
you're letting it go.
hmm Yeah, and then I mean if you're supporting your ministries, I mean that's kind of how we support our ministries nowadays is through
Yes.
currency. So how
Right.
would we then that's kind of my kind of thought train here.
Yeah, no, that's a really good
So
question.
I only am able to find one cover at the moment, but
No
even
problem.
typing into Amazon and or your Google for books, why tithing is no longer biblical. We have kleptomaniac, who's really robbing God anyway, and that is by
Kleptomaniac.
Dr. Frank Chase Jr. And even maybe type. I'm gonna try to see if that because I'm
Yeah,
talking right now. Does that mean me? I'm on the main screen, so you can see it.
up a little bit.
Okay.
Um,
That helps.
okay.
This again, just maybe just kleptomaniac Dr. Frank Chase Jr.
Okay.
And then even when you type that in to like Amazon, look for other book recommendations or books bought
Okay.
in succession with this or with so it said purchase. That's
hmm
usually how I find a lot of my stuff. And again, I'll gauge
hmm
reviews, and then I'll also gauge the description to see if that's what I'm looking for. Basically, Old Testament wise, that was how you kept the priesthood going.
Yeah.
Now it's more of a concept of keeping the ecclesia going and also having funds available to help the widows and the orphans and whatnot.
hmm
I would almost, how would I say this? When we're hearing terminology of communism,
hmm
it was more of like we're pulling our resources together to help one another. So again, was Jesus a socialist? Yes and no. It wasn't necessarily as a state-run socialism. If anything, it was more of an aspect of mutualism. Again, feel
Okay.
free to Google that.
Yep.
I think I was talking a little bit more with Renee about
Yeah.
that. It's a cooperation system that we're working together for mutual
Yeah.
ends. When like the I think what was the exact phrasing? Paraphrasing, like a lot of the early church sell everything they have and contribute it to the church. Not that everybody's supposed to do that because we have like Lydia the merchant. We have other aspects in the
hmm
Bible where like not everybody can just do that. I get it. But when you also have the means of having a lot of money, what are you contributing that towards? Even with Ananias and Sapphira, when they were giving their funds over to Peter, the problem was not that they held a little bit back. The problem was that they lied that they did hold a little something back for their
mm
own portion. Because again, is more of a concept, are you going to be a person of your word?
mm.
Christ is the word of God. He kept his part of the bargain. Now you are claiming to be followers of Christ. And what are you doing about this? You are now inverting. You're not good on your word. So why would we be accepting your money?
Uh,
So money was a concept of honor. It was not so much a concept of accumulation and wealth. The commune aspect is kind of like how we hear, I'm going to say Jewish communities where everybody's a doctor, everybody's a lawyer, everybody's a this, that, and the other thing. How they make that work is that they all basically have a pool of money. We put all our money in that. So when somebody's ready to go into college, they have everything basically paid free. And when they're done, they get their degree. They're already making a lot of money. They just put that money right back into the pool for the next generation to come up. And they're doing it all debt free. That was the concept back then. So the
Wow.
same thing with Ecclesia. We need money to go do this. We need money to go feed people. This person's having a problem with medical stuff. That was more the concept as opposed to let's build a great cathedral and tell people this is where we find God,
Mm.
right? If that makes more sense. And it's not regulated by the state. The concept is like, you know what?
Yeah.
We're here, but what if it's beavers, beaver pelts, and like furs? This is this is the currency here. What if it's exchanging salt to preserve my crops? Right? What is the commodity of commerce, quote unquote, at that time? Because we've been programmed to thinking it always has to be materialistic in the concept of metals, right? But it's more like, you know what? There's something beneficial here. Let's negotiate what exactly I can do for you, as opposed to actually always being money. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. And I hope that helps. I picked it up, still getting towards that. Right now, I'm kind of veering into words. That's going to be one of the next presentations, probably 2 weeks from now, I think. Be soon. Any other questions?
Cool.
Is Millie there?
Yeah, she's out
Okay.
here. She was just she's working on art and stuff. She just recently
Folding
started
laundry.
school, so she's got a lot of art homework and stuff, so she's
All good.
listening.
It's all good.
Good.
It's just weird because I see you there, but I see her name there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
All right. Let's continue. Like 2 pages of this, 2.5 pages of this, and then we go into the other book. We now come to the text which record Christ's own sayings, in which exegetus, I'm butchering that, sorry, regard as the probability of authentic. We do not have early Christian interpretation, but the position of what Christ himself, which evidently was the source of the early Christian interpretation. There are 5 main sayings. Naturally, the first is the famous saying, render to Caesar. I will briefly recall that story, Mark 12:13. The enemies of Christ were trying to entrap him, and the Herodians put the question, have complimented Christ on his wisdom. They then asked whether taxes should be paid to the emperor. Is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not? Should we pay or should we not pay? The question itself is illuminating. As the text tells us, they were trying to use Christ's own words to entrap him. If we put this question then, it was because it was already being debated. Christ had the reputation of being hostile towards Caesar, which all Christians should make note of. If they could raise this question with a view to being able to accuse Christ to the Romans, stories must have been circulating that he was telling people to not pay taxes. As he often does, Christ avoids the trap by making it an ironical reply. Bring me a coin and let me look at it. When it is done, he himself puts a question. Whose likeness and inscription is this? It is evidently a Roman coin. One of the skillful means of integration used by the Romans was to circulate their own money throughout the empire. This became the basic coinage against which all others were measured. The Herodians replied to Christ, Caesar's. Now we need to realize that in the Roman world, an individual mark on an object denoted ownership, like cattle brands in the American West in the 19th century. The mark was the only way in which ownership could be recognized. Make note of Mark of the Beast when I'm reading this. In the composite structure of the Roman Empire, it applied to all goods. People all had their own marks, whether a seal, stamp, or painted sign. Kind of like a lot of the logos and stuff like that. The merchants were the great men of the earth, all that stuff. The head of Caesar on this coin was more than a decoration or a mark of honor. It signified that all money in circulation in the empire belonged to Caesar. This was very important. Those who held the coins were very precarious owners. They never really owned the bronze and silver pieces. Whenever an emperor died, the likeness was changed. Caesar was the sole proprietor. Christ then had a very simple answer: render to Caesar that which is Caesar's. You find his likeness on the coin. The coin then belongs to him. Give it back to him when he demands it. Now, whoop whoop, drop my card. Hold on. Now, what was I just saying? That the Herodians denoted ownership. Blah, blah, blah. One skillful means of circulate their own empire, basic coinage against what was I just had something that popped up when I read that. So we have in Revelation, I think I lost it. There goes the bookmark. We have in Revelation that those who do not worship the image of the beast, or it's forcing people to worship its image. And it also talks about a statue that's given the ability to speak to enforce this. Kind of sounds like those robots to help you with domestic things going on. One of the days they just snap because, their machines are rising, quote unquote. But it's kind of true, right? And we're making robots in what image? Humanoids, man, right? We're trying to become our own gods and trying to give it the function of a human being. And thus, in turn, seems only quite natural that that should come back on us. Now, going back to the pyramid scheme, as I referred before, these guys think that they're going to ascend to an I status, right? Fire the sun god, pyramid. Fire the sun god in your midst. That's what pyramid means. Pi, fire, Ra, Re, sun god, mid, in your midst. I can ascend to become my own god. In order for these AI robots to have, what do you call it, a function, it requires a current. Currency, banks of a river, banks of ocean, right? Any monetary thing you want to use of liquid. Coincidentally, if you're going by other stuff, Nephilim all drowned in the flood. Now, if you're going by what Elon Musk was saying, with AI, we are summoning the demon. AI will provide universal income for all. Mark, right? We're making the robots, iron and clay, making an empire of ourselves, right? Man mixing with machine, iron and clay, making an alliance with materialism. The very thing that Christ was saying, don't do that, because you were made in the image of God. Now we go to Nicodemus on the rooftop, John 3. That which is born of spirit is spirit. That which is born of flesh is flesh. I am coming to give you something of spirit. What are you talking about? Because what does he say? What is his last phrase on the cross? Does everybody remember that?
It is finished.
It is finished, or into thy hands I commit my spirit. And then maybe he said it is finished, or it is finished. Thus, I commit. Whatever. One of those two phrases. Temple veil rips in two. Ark of the Covenant was where the presence of God was kept. You can't look on the face of God, but if you did have to have an embodiment of that, Christ was it. That was God's word. God is true. And now that grants that to have access to indwell us. So we technically have a mark, a spiritual mark. It's not visual unless people are observing our testimony, because it is of spirit, right? When they ask of the hope and faith that's within you. Christian is a verb. By faith. You read all that stuff. By faith. Somebody put verb, they put faith to action. When you read all of Hebrews 11, we're putting faith to action to show the world that I believe what God told me and what God said, and I'm going to follow that all the way through. That's our mark. We're supposed to be observed in the world, right? But we're not aligned with Caesar. We're not concerned so much about materialism or money or accumulative material wealth, right? Because our mind is set on things above. In contrast, people are making their identity by being able to produce Roman coins. And that was the other aspect. So, the original 13 colonies, and I think this was Our Enemy, the State, Albert J. Nock. They all had different coins, right? They all had different currencies within each colony. Once they started regulating a bank, we all went to one form of currency. What does this start doing? You're no longer independent because you're all becoming one entity. It's an agreed upon lie. We all become one, and we all say that this is the one true thing. Similarly, if we abolish something that divides all of us economically, internationally, money, but we all agree in the concept of digital because we've been programmed through our stupid phones and video games, we all can read money, right? Uno, dos, tres. I don't know how to say it in German, but I used to. Everybody, they know how to count, right? And that's what you're counting on, is putting your faith in materialism to mark yourself. You won't be able to buy or sell. So again, mark of a true Christian is you'll understand the testimony of his spirit. He's putting his faith into action. Mark of somebody who's of this world, they're focused on materialism. They're aligned with the state. They're defending things of this world. Does that make sense? Questions, comments, concerns? No? All right. Let's get a sip here and we'll continue. And I think I only got a page and a half, but lost the bookmark, so bear with me. Oh, I wasn't able to make it to the store. We had 3 or 4 inches that fell down, and I was like, you know what? Sticky snow. I don't like driving in this crap. Got an old car. Christian generation political authorities. The divider. Okay. We now come to the text which record Christ's own sayings. Render unto Caesar. Where did I stop? It was like this is on the inscription. This became the basic coinage which against was measured. The Herodians, read over here. Taxes are lawful. Okay. With the answer, Christ does not say that taxes are lawful. He does not counsel obedience to the Romans. He simply faces up to the evidence. But what really belongs to Caesar. The excellent example used by Christ makes this plain. Whatever bears his mark. Here is the basis and limit of his power. But where is this mark? On coins? On public monuments? And think of some stuff in America when you're seeing them on this. And on certain altars. This is all. Render to Caesar. You can pay the tax. Doing so is without importance or significance, for all money belongs to Caesar and or governments of this world. And if he wanted, he could simply confiscate it. Paying or not paying taxes is not a basic question. It is not even a true political question. On the other hand, whatever does not bear Caesar's mark does not belong to him. It belongs to God. This is where the real conscientious objection arises. Caesar has no right whatever to the rest. First, we have life. Caesar has no right of life or death. Caesar has no right to plunge people into war. Caesar has no right to devastate and ruin a country. Caesar's domain is very limited. We may oppose most of his pretensions in the name of God. Christ challenges the Herodians then, for they have no objections to what he says. They too were used, and since the text tells us that those who put the question were Pharisees as well as Herodians, we can be certain that some of them were devout Jews. Hence, they could not contest the statement of Christ that all the rest is God's. And at the same time, Christ was replying indirectly to the Zealots, who wanted to transform the struggle for the liberation of Israel into a political struggle. He reminded them what was the limit as well as the basis of the struggle. The second saying of Christ was political authorities comes in an astonishing discussion. The disciples were accompanying him to Jerusalem, where some of them were seen or thought that he would seize power. They were arguing who would be the closest to him when he entered upon the kingly rule in Matthew 20 through 25. The wife of Zebedee presented her 2 sons, James and John, and made the express request that Christ would command that the 2 of them, she pointed, though knew Christ them well enough, should sit on the right hand and on the other on his left. We see here, once again, the general climate and incomprehension in which Christ lived. For he had not just told the disciples that he knew that he would be violently put to death in Jerusalem. He thus said to them first that they had no understanding. He concluded with a statement that is relevant for us. You know that the rulers of the nations lord it over them, and those in high position enslave them. It shall not be so among you, but whoever would be great among you must be the servant. Note that he makes no distinction or reservation. All national rulers, no matter what the nation or the political regime, lord it over their subjects. There can be no political power without tyranny. This is plain and certain for Christ. When there are rulers and great leaders, there can be no such thing as good political power. Here again, power is called into question. Power corrupts. We catch an echo of the verse that we quoted above from Ecclesiastes. But we note also that Christ does not advocate revolt or material conflict with these kings and great ones. He reverses this question and so often challenges his interlocutors. But you, it must not be the same among you. In other words, do not be so concerned about fighting kings. Let them be. Set up a marginal society which will not be interested in such things, in which there will be no power, authority, or hierarchy. Do not do things as they are usually done in society, which you cannot change. Create another society or another foundation. Basically, when I'm reading that, be in the world, not of the world. We're using Caesar's currency, but this means nothing to us. We don't need an actual physical building like they do. We can meet in a park. We can meet by a river. We can, we'll go over to somebody else's house. That was kind of the beauty of the early ecclesia because we all have the same problems. We all have the same gripes, but we're all still one body. But we're mobile. Whereas everybody else has to be structured. It needs to be this. It needs to have a hierarchy. And it's like, I think you're kind of missing the point. Because a lot of the great minds, whether you want to go with George Orwell, you want to go with Nietzsche, you want to go with Tolstoy, they all had problems with the institutional structure of man imposing God's laws upon others. It's like, yeah, it sounds great, but I just don't like the way you guys do it. You've been hurting people with the way you go about delivering the message. And if you're not hurting them, you get all pious and you wear all these fancy robes in the streets, which is exactly what Christ was condemning. So they appreciated Christian ethics, but what did the Christians look like? Were they bearing the mark of Christ that they read about? Not really. Therefore, I can't conclude that you guys have it right. And how sad that is. Because Christianity does have its merits, and they're always saying, great teacher, like what he says, don't like how his Christians look. Why? Because we're not living as the Spirit. We're not having our own separate community. Another thing, we don't know how to set boundaries. It's like, listen, there's a certain point, while you're even with me, I can't have certain people following me on Facebook when I see they change their profile picture with a Christmas tree behind it. It's really hard. It's like, I'm sorry, but if you're following my page, I'm a zealot. I'm radical. I'm always telling you why I don't like this stuff. We could still be friends. You can still follow, but I'm not like, I don't want to have you be my friend because that irks me every time I see your profile picture pop up. And it's not, oh, that's just you. No, it's offending God, and that's just something we need to start abstaining from. Granted, you have the right to keep doing what you want in your own household. I'm not going to force you to do anything. But it's a concept of you got to start setting boundaries in order for me to see the mark of the Spirit within you. Questions, comments, concerns, retorts, snide remarks.
You
Really?
never know.
You guys always throw me off because it gets really quiet. I'm like, there's got to be somebody with some argument to make. And or
Not
a
necessarily
counterpoint.
arguments, just kind of thinking about all of it, trying to absorb it all and kind of apply it to what's going on today. I mean, does that, I don't know, I guess we have to like being in a country, I mean, we kind of have to be a part of the country, but not,
Identified.
yeah, identify
In,
with
not
it.
of.
So, I mean, I guess at some point I don't know, would like separating yourself like be better as
That's what
far as
saint
just like
means.
moving away.
That is the very definition of the word saint. Antichrist makes war against the saint. Saint is a
Mm,
person that's set apart. They're in the world, not of the world.
Mhm.
Hence why the whole argument can be easily averted when you're asking the question of the Civil War or a war. It's like, well, there's Christians on both sides. Yeah, but if you're going by like the Roman standard, when they were observing the early ecclesia, there was a guy that was saying Rome is following to the barbarians because not more Christians are joining the ranks of Caesar. If you won't join the legions, you have. And the guy saying if more people became Christians, we would have no reason to go to war.
yeah.
Yeah, but you see, that's part of the thing where it's like, well, again, we're going to be hated by all nations. All the nations belong to Satan. So if a Christian saying, I don't believe in borders, huh? I think it was there was a map. I'll have to take a screenshot and post it at some point. I reposted it again. But it was taking a screenshot of all the countries around the world. Um, I'll read that in a second. All the countries in the world, there is, I think, like 70 something percent that all have blood mentioned in their national anthem.
Oh,
Did man create blood? No,
no.
God did. And who was the first person to die by murder?
Oh, Abel.
And what do we read when God is confronting Cain about this situation? I hear your
Oh,
brother's
let his
blood
blood
crying
cry out.
from the face of the earth. We read over, I think, over in Proverbs, seven things that the Lord hates. One of them is hands that shed innocent blood. So at a certain point, this life force aspect, I'm not saying there's not a time where like if they break into your house, so I think it's over in Leviticus where it talks about yes, you do have the right to self-defense for things like that.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Uh-huh.
But it doesn't mean you join Caesar's ranks willingly. If anything, if there was more conscientious objectors or people being locked up because it's like, well, why? Why would you put yourself through that? Sometimes a martyr doesn't necessarily die right away, but it's the testimony of they put you in jail for such a long period of time because you objected to a conscription, right? You're forcing me to fight for you. Like, why should I fight for you? I've never met you. I've never
Mhm.
shook your hand. Well, it's patriotic. Patriotism is the newest form of peasantry.
Wow. Yeah.
Think about it. Again, fortunate son. It ain't me. I ain't no fortunate son. I'm not a senator's son. You sit behind a desk. You pay money to make sure your kid doesn't get called out to go fight in the front lines on some foreign country and soil. But you're going to take me and my own autonomy, my own life that I am given. You're going to have me go fight your war. How dare you? And again, same concept. It's not necessarily even the government. It's saying, well, if I am now belonging to God, why am I giving my life force to government? Does that answer your question a little bit more?
Mhm.
Again, I think it's ironic because I had somebody writing, "Oh, I see you. You're calling yourself a saint. Hey, if you're a fellow Christian, we're all saints, Renee. Like we're all saints
Yeah.
here. What's your
Right.
problem?" And he doesn't seem to. I said so. And again, he's from Spain. I said you're probably interpreting this through a Catholic lens, where it's
Yes.
Saint Paul, Saint John, Saint
Right.
this. And it's saying if somebody literally means like God, he's
Yep.
separate from his creation. He did create it, but he's separate. We are supposed to be like God in the world, not of the world.
Mhm.
Why? Because we're the light. That is what it is. When you're asking, should we be separate? Yeah. But we should also be a semi-standard. If we went back to Eden, this is roughly with like a 80-90%. We're trying to strive in this direction of emulating Christ and implementing his rules. This is what it would look like. As best we can, as flawed as we are. But enough where people go, it's weird, but I see why you're doing it. How do I do likewise?
Yeah.
That's the whole essence of being a Christian. But unfortunately, they tell us with patriotism and all this other stuff, you need to have a border. God didn't draw borders. I think it's Leviticus 25:23 or 23:25. God says, I own the land, so there's no such thing as property. Oh, so if I am drawing a border, I just made a distinction. Don't cross this line. And we're more concerned about that as opposed to crossing the line of abusing God's word or
Mm.
inverting his word to our own
Mhm.
means. We're
Yeah.
concerned about that, right? So, yeah. The thing is, this is where I keep telling people. For by means of example, I really like hearing Michael Parenti give an explanation of critiquing corporate imperialism, which is capitalism. How do we get all these bananas on our shelves? Most people don't know anything about the banana wars, but that's just a nice place to put your toe in the doornail and say, toe in the doornail, toe in the door, toe in the door, and start asking some questions like, how did I get this option of, free choice, right? I had to exploit other countries in order to get this aspect
Mm,
on my car, whether it's getting rubber, whether it's getting
mm,
copper, iron, whatever. They're not poor, they're overexploited, but I am benefiting off of that exploitation. Now, is there anything I can do about it? No, but guess what I can do? I can advocate. I can defend. When I do send money, I'm sending it to those kind of individuals as opposed to saying they're the problem. I'm saying, no, I'm
right.
helping the widows and the orphans. That's what I'm called to do. Well, what about their nationality? Who gives a crap about their nationality? This is the Good Samaritan clause, or do unto others as you'd want them to do unto you. If they're in the ditch bleeding out, I'm going to run over there with some bandages. I'll go call 911. I'll do what I can to help despite the ethnic background or the religious differences or whatever. Why? Because that speaks a lot louder than just Muhammad is the way. It's over here going, well, why are you helping me? I'm Muslim. You're a human being. You're made in the image of God. Now, what's speaking louder? You reciting scripture and telling him to get it right? Or are you illustrating actions that makes him prompt the question of his whole life? That's not what people do. I've never seen somebody claiming the title adjective Christian, but actually doing something completely contrary. That is the Christian I want to follow, right? Anyways, that answer questions. Cool. Stuart, I do have questions. So daughter is sleeping on me and can't go on voice. It's also a pure personal question. Yeah,
Okay.
shoot me a DM, Stuart. Or we can coordinate that with our other show if that works. I think I answered all of that.
What other
Okay.
show?
Another show. Another show. All right.
Oh, another show. Got it. I'm like, wait, I want into the other show.
Well, with Stuart, he's got such a crazy work schedule. Again, I'm willing to
Okay.
work throughout the week and stuff like that. And I'm going to start possibly writing contracts. I had somebody blow me off, and that's was a very expensive blow me off. I didn't. Yeah, it wasn't good. It wasn't
Hmm.
good. Stuff goes on behind the scenes, folks. That's not good.
Okay.
All right. Let us see. I'm trying. Okay. All right. Do I want to go back one page? Yeah. We'll go here. All right, the last symbol. This is going into the Maccabees. It's Principalities, Powers, and Allegiances by Matt Mousakis, and that is Mouzakis, and Will Ryan. It's I agree with about three-quarters of it. When they start getting to like the revelation aspects, towards the end of this book, I'm very much against. But it does not mean that the book does not have its own merits. And again, that's my own personal interpretation and gripes. It doesn't necessarily mean I'm right, doesn't necessarily mean I'm wrong. And if you're asking for a review, that is my personal 2 cents. If you read it and you want to talk about it, cool. But it's like
Okay.
700 something page book. So feel free to come back to me when you read. All right. Essentially, this was a cry to help. In Matthew's account, they have the people spreading their coats on the road as Jesus enters into Jerusalem. Again, just as kind of, I'm reading this in sequential order because that's where you're just coming off of, and this is where this starts in this book. Just be aware of that. This was a customary way of welcoming or coordinating of a king. We see this in 2 Kings 9:13. If anybody wants to write that down, reason being, I think Jax Alol has another book that talks about the guy I'm about to talk about in 2 Kings 9:13. It is the politics of God and the politics of man. And Jax is spelled Jacquus, and then Alol Ellul. They're not heavy reads, about 100 something pages, 150 sometimes for some of these. They're roughly this size book, very very small. This and for me, the way he broke down Kings when you're reading in the Bible, and like what you were just asking, how do we make this applicational today? He takes the whole concept of what we're reading in Kings, while saying, doesn't God designate kings and stuff like that? He starts breaking down the concept. Do you see how man is inverting it here in this story? And you see what God was asking and advocating through his man of God that was representing during this time. And when you start reading it with that commentary, for me, it's going, whoa, we really have goofed up on the meaning of First and Second Kings, and grasping like they didn't betray you, Samuel, they betrayed me, and understanding when is a good man of God a leader, king, and when is he bad, and where do we start veering on that? And these stories help, and it starts in Second Kings 9-13 with Jehu was crowned king. He's covered a lot in that book, Politics of God, Politics of Man. Christ's entry was not centered around the people being excited to see Christ, but it was shaping up to be a political rebellion. They are trying to make Christ their king. The last symbol to analyze is the use of the palm branches. Matthew and Mark state that the crowd was waving branches, and John confirms that they were palms. In Christ's day, the palm branch was a politically loaded symbol. To understand the symbol, we must return to the discussion we began above with the Maccabean revolt. About 200 years before Christ's triumphal entry into Jerusalem, the Seleucid Empire ruled over Israel. Around 167 BC, Antiochus IV Epiphanes sacked Jerusalem and desecrated the temple by slaughtering a pig upon the altar. He then ordered all those in Judah to sacrifice to his gods and sent inspectors into all the towns to enforce this decree. Matthias, who was a priest, killed one of the king's inspectors, tore down the altar, and fled for the hills. He eventually became ill, and his message to his sons on his deathbed was, avenge the wrong done to your people, pay back the Gentiles in full. 1 Maccabees 2:67-68. His dying words inspired his sons to lead a rebellion against the Seleucids. One of the sons, named Judas, got the nickname the Hammer. Now, again, pause, think, Judas Iscariot, because he betrayed Christ, somebody was putting the hammer and nails into Christ. Imagine that. You're hearing roughly the verdict. He's probably going to be put to death tomorrow and be put on a Roman cross. No, no. Judas Maccabee was the hammer. I wanted to be the anvil. All I wanted to do was balance out and kind of hone in what Christ was supposed to be focusing on from man's perspective. That's what I wanted to be done. And now I'm going to be the hammer, basically, that's going into his wrists because of no. So again, think of this in the concept of Judas having possibly a name of a rebellion guy that was celebrated in Israel. Now you're going through this turmoil in your head that it's not going to go down like you're thinking when you're reading about this guy. And under his leadership, the Jews won the battle. Eventually, Judas recaptured Jerusalem and the temple. As Judas Maccabeus was in triumphal entry into the city and proceeded to cleanse the temple, like Christ was, cleanse the temple by overturning the different ways, but similar concept being illustrated here. His followers celebrated the victory with praise and palm branches and with hymns and songs. First Maccabees 13:51 and Second Maccabees 10:1-9. From then on, the palms became a key symbol regarding the independence of Jerusalem, essentially a flag of freedom and a call to fight. Following the Maccabean revolt, they minted coins with palms on them, encircled with their battle cry for the redemption of Zion. Now remember that temple coin that was printed that has Trump's thing on there? It's got a palm tree in the background, along with a Saturn thing at the very top. So again, when you're reading this stuff and you're understanding, this is what it meant in the ancient time. We know that the occult still is following an ancient reading of language. So for me, it's like just be wary of that when you're reading this kind of things, because when it now pops up on modern symbols, this is where we're going, oh, okay. Now I know when I see it, understanding how they're talking to each other. We're over here, the dumb goyim, going, "Oh, this is so great, moving the embassy to Jerusalem, wonderful! Oh, yeah, crazy." Similarly, after Christ's entry during the Jewish revolts after Rome in 66 to 70 AD, in 135 AD, coins with palms were also minted. By waving the palms at Christ, the crowd believed that Christ was going to be their liberator in the same way that Judas Maccabee was. The Pharisees recognized this, and in Luke 19:39, they asked Christ to rebuke his disciples, and Christ responds with, "I tell you, if these became silent, the stones will cry out." Is Christ approving of this correlation to Judas? Scholars believe Christ is using what is called a remez, where a rabbi would use a line of scripture to bring context to the audience's attention. Christ here is likely alluding to the context of Habakkuk 2 9 through 12. Woe to him who gets evil gain for his house, to put his nest on high, to be delivered from the hand of calamity. You have devised a shameful thing for your house by cutting off many peoples, so you are sinning against yourself. Surely the stone will cry out from the wall, and rafter will answer it from the framework. Woe to him who builds a city with bloodshed and founds a town with violence. I was finding that kind of interesting because that sounds kind of almost similar to all these billionaires that are building cities underground. You're getting all this money on Amazon, you're getting all this money there, and what are you doing? I don't care about you guys, but I'm going to be making it secure for me. And or creating fish in a barrel scenarios where if you're watching it's a movie with Morgan Freeman, and I can't remember what the name of it is at the moment, but basically the concept is the world is about to be hit with a giant meteorite, and we can only fit about 5 million people underground in these bunkers to save humanity. I was going, yeah, well, hey, humanity, we happen to have these wonderful, luxurious underground cities. Go with any conspiracy theory you may with that, to what extent this is true or not true. And it's like, yeah, we'll just put you down there, and then once we lock the doors, everything will be fine. Then it's over here. Ha, feast time. Fish in a barrel moment. Christ's response to this was a display, was to mourn, which ties into the context of Habakkuk 2, where calamity will come to the city built in the ways of the world by living by the sword. Matthew 26:52. It's another little bit of a nod, maybe thinking about Peter, was what's about to happen, right? We're not doing this on blood. We're not fighting with blood. We're not doing that. We're fighting with the sword of the Spirit. In the world, not of the world. Like this concept. You're thinking in physical terms. God is spiritual. And I know it's hard once in a while, but that's the whole premise of understanding Christianity. It doesn't require a physical structure to get the message across. It's about spirit, conduct, and character. That is what convicts other people. I mean, honestly, when you look at rulers or you look at people who are so fond of stars and Hollywood celebrities, what do they appreciate about them? Their work. He kept his promises, promises made, promises kept, or so on and so forth, right? We'll appreciate how they look on screen, how they're all dressed up, whether they're very articulate. Like my dad asked him one time, the only time we talked about politics, he said Obama is he's a very great orator. I was like, really? Like, are we Democrat? Are we not? It's like a lot of people are saying he might be the Antichrist. This is back in the day when I was still like a teenager, and I'm just like, okay, so what else? What do you think about his policies? What do you think about this? Doesn't have anything to say about that. But people are so enthralled of somebody who's in power, whether that's the way they articulate, whether they acted on screen, and then you somehow have equated them to like, if I could live like your character does in a fictional sense, right? That's what I like about you. And you really, like on most people, they don't know about these spirit cooking events. They don't understand what's going on with the Epstein stuff. Again, like scenarios of this caliber, and then yet that's what people admire about them. Whereas a Christian, you're really struggling, but I don't hear you cussing. You're going through all this. How come you're not, drinking? How come you're not doing drugs? How come you're not doing this? That's not what I look to for, those little moments is like you're doing it different from everybody else I've seen go through the same situation. That speaks volumes. You may think it's nothing, but somebody is observing you, whether you know it or not. And you might even notice this, and I'll give you a little bit of a nod. If somebody says, "Oh, I'm sorry," because they just cussed Christ or something like that, and they know you're a Christian, why are they apologizing? You're not a boss. Well, again, in a lot of cases, it's like, "Oh, I'm not a boss. I don't know why you're apologizing." Well, I know you believe in that stuff, but they have a certain sense of reverence because somehow they know you represent Christ while you're standing here. So just think of it in that concept. Blah, blah, blah. In the world by living by the sword, Matthew 26:52. When he approached Jerusalem, he saw the city and he wept over it, saying, "If you had known in this day, even you, the things which make for peace, but now they have been hidden from your eyes. For the days will come upon you when your enemies will throw up a barricade against you and surround you and hem you in on every side, and they will level you to the ground and your children within you, and they will not leave in you one stone upon another, because you did not recognize the time of your visitation." Luke 19:40 through 44. Now, whether or not true, when we were just talking about the temple or the Wailing Wall, I was talking to the guy last night. Does make an interesting point. He says, now if that was supposed to be 70 AD in which he was referring, says, wouldn't that wall have fallen if it was the temple? And yet that wall is still standing.
Mhm.
I was going, whoa, that's actually a good point. So is that still meaning there's something yet to come? Is it a dual prophecy where yes and no? Just enough to put a little pin on that, going, okay, I'm not 100% sure. Because if that's the Roman fortress, maybe if it's still part of the temple, that the thing that Herod built, maybe there's something more here. Um, the crowd would have expected this Messiah to ride in on a war horse, according to Jeremiah 17:25. But the use of the donkey was to challenge the people's conception of his kingly mission. J.F. Coakley, and that's Coakley, I'm not sure if there's a book or whatever, writes, by not riding a horse as a nationalistic Messiah would be expected to do, Christ intends to rebuke or correct the aspirations of those who acclaim him. He was acting out the role of a humble and peaceable king. This fits the context of the Zechariah prophecy as well, when the verse following the king's entry on the colt of a donkey describes peace, with, "I will cut off the chariot from Ephraim, and the horse from Jerusalem, and the bow of war will be cut off, and he will speak peace to the nations, and his dominion will be from the sea to sea, and from the river to the ends of the earth." Zechariah 9 through 10. Not only was riding a donkey a symbolic act, but another symbolic act was also going in at the same gate in Jerusalem. Christ was coming into Jerusalem on what is referred to as Lamb Selection Day. This was the 10th day in Nisan, and God commanded every family to select its lamb for Passover on this day in Exodus 12, verse 3. According to Jewish historians, the sheep were supplied from Bethlehem and brought through the city's northeast gate, which was known as the Sheep Gate. As possible picture being painted here is Christ, who was born in Bethlehem, made his entry into Jerusalem on the day the suppliers were bringing in the lambs, and some argue that he entered through the same gate, depicting Christ as the sacrificial lamb of God, rather than the hammer of God. Not only was a contrast in kingdoms going to be going on, but a contrast in methods, the things that make for peace. One was violent, the other is being sacrificial. Complete contrast. Render unto Caesar. Similar to the sacrificial lamb, which would be inspected for 4 days, Christ was in public for inspection as the Lamb of God. We'll now look at one of these exchanges with the religious leaders over taxes. They then sent the Pharisees, the Herodians, to him in order to trap him with the statement, "Teacher, we know that you are truthful and defer to no one, but you're not partial to any, but teach the way of God is truth. Is it lawful to pay a poll tax to Caesar or not? Shall we pay or shall we not pay?" But he, knowing their hypocrisy, said to them, "Why are you testing me? Bring me a denarius to look at." They brought one. And he said to them, "Whose likeness and inscription is this?" And they said to him, "Caesar's." And Christ said to them, "Render to Caesar the things that are at Caesar's, and to God the things that are at God's." And they were amazed. So I could probably keep reading, but basically the stuff that I've already talked about before. It's a lot of hold on, I can't. All right, the question they asked Christ is if it was lawful to pay taxes to Caesar. The taxes mentioned in Mark and Matthew, the poll tax, the kensos, that is Kensos, but Luke mentions the tribute tax, the phoros, which is Phoros. But sometimes this is a sales or property tax. Whichever tax was intended, the Jews saw taxes as more than a hefty economic burden, but also evidence that they were subjects of Rome. These taxes were first imposed in Judea in 6 AD, and every adult was required to pay. At the time of a Galilean named Judas, possibly after Maccabeus, led a popular tax revolt. Many joined his cause, but they were no match for Rome. The revolt was defeated. According to Acts 5:37, Judas was executed, following the Roman census in 6 AD. So, again, whether Judas was named after that Judas or named after Maccabee, I lean towards the Maccabee aspect. There's a big contrast of what the priorities were and also how you view money in the ancient world. And what, again, we give Judas a lot of crap, but one thing that Judas does that a lot of Christians can't even do, he threw back the materialism at the end of the day. He wanted to make amends. Doesn't know what Christ is about to do. According to their laws, it was the high priest that should have been punishing him for betraying one of their own, but he made the deal with them. So he has no other recourse but to throw back materialism back into the institution. And what is he supposed to do? Well, I'm so ashamed of my actions, I'm going to curse myself because this is how I apologize to God. I've done the unthinkable. I'm not condoning taking one's life on your own. But good grief. I think he shows a lot more repentance for his actions than a lot of Christians today. And I know we're always painting him as like the number one guy to quote when you're betraying somebody, but in contrast, if he's thinking rebellion, revolution, this is how we do it, to the point where you're throwing back the one means you did get out of all this, and then you want to curse yourself because it's like, how do I apologize to God? If this is what I did with my life, then I deserve to end it in such a way that God could possibly. Just saying. Just saying. Anyways, that's pretty much all I had. Not sure if it gave you guys something to think about, but it was something that made me think, so open for discussion.
Yeah, a lot of good stuff to read. That's for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Thoughts, concerns, counterpoints?
No, I love what you're saying about Judas, just what his life is like, and like you said, we kind of go, we condemn him, but I love what you said, how repentant he was. That's
As best as he knew how at that time, because I
yeah.
know we're quick to judge him, but it's like, what's he
Yeah,
supposed to do? I can't make a sacrifice. I can't go run over past the guards and apologize. It's just enough to make you go, I kind of sympathize with him. Not that I
yeah,
condone, but I
right,
sympathize. Like, good grief.
exactly.
What are you supposed to do? You're literally up against a corner. And again, if you find one of the other disciples, they're probably going to want to take your own life because, again, it's like, well, I'm not going to go up against Rome, but I'll take you out because you're the. So what am I supposed to do?
No,
I
that
don't
was
know.
really,
Food for
really
thought.
good stuff to ponder. I really appreciated that. Um,
What you got, Bames?
No, yeah, I'm just echo what Renee said. I've never really thought about Judas in that aspect before to really kind of, think about what he was thinking at the time. You just kind of focus more on just the betrayal itself.
The incentives, the history that led up to it, and again, for me, I think it's Kings and Generals on YouTube. they were talking about what happens post Alexander the Great dying, and they built this giant. I think it was led by like 32 to 36 horses, if I remember correctly. A giant like mausoleum on wheels, and they were going to go throughout the entire empire with Alexander the Great's body, and somebody stole the body. I'm like, how have I never heard about that story? And then of course they divide it up into four portions, and it talks about all the civil wars and factions and stuff like that going on. And one of them is a little brief episode that covers specifically the Maccabean revolt. And for me, it's like, okay, I'm hearing about the story of Christ being born, but I'm not understanding the political intrigue of the courts, quote unquote, and for Herod as incentive of wanting to kill a kid. How did I get this power? How do I keep this power? He's aligned with Rome, right? Same thing with Judas. Well, in order to get away from oppression or an occupying force, whether it's Greek or Roman, we got to fight. We got to do this physically. Contrast, Christ is throwing a monkey wrench in both concepts. I don't make alliances with the state. And then again, that's what both authors are trying to get across as principalities, whether you're going against archy, as in fallen archons, hierarchy, architecture, arcs. I'm finding a lot of commonalities. The more I keep saying the word, I'm like, wait a minute, this is getting whether or not root etymology. The other ones is saying no, we submit to nobody, no king but Christ. And that's a problem to people who love the kings of this earth and the world and the nations of this earth.
What are archons? Can you tell me that again? You said fallen
I
archons, archies. What is that root
I did a
word
couple
mean?
episodes, Curse of the Archons, Statist or Saint.
Okay.
Archons are supposed to be another equivalent of Titans, Nephilim.
Okay.
Um, there's somebody who doesn't want to believe any of the stuff with the Nephilim. I'm trying to be the one sound voice amidst all the chaos of saying I do think there is a probability, whether they exist to the extent, some of these channels try to go down. I think heavily most of them are spirit based now, and they're trying to utilize them via robots and technology. Why do I suspect that? Well, the other day I just found out that TECHE, Teche, means snake. So every time I'm reading the word technology, I now see
Yeah.
snakeology. It's just something that's it.
Yeah.
But with the caveat, because people could say, well, you're doing a podcast, so you're kind of being a hypocrite using technology. It's like, well,
Yeah,
no
yeah.
weapons, forged against us shall prosper. And again, knowledge will increase in the last days. I'm trying to utilize this
Mm.
by helping the ecclesia
Yep.
that want to keep reading the word and to at least be a little bit more prepared. And also just start viewing, how do I live my life? One thing, I might be leaning towards doing like a Kick live stream. I'm not sure when that will be. But for people to have more of an option of asking questions, but it's also maybe not so much going to be 100% Bible based, but it's like bouncing off concept of people that have gone before, talking about the concept of individualism, talking about the horrors that they're seeing of technology back in the 1940s. And it's like, well, they kind of weren't wrong. And just bringing out this concept of where I agree, where I disagree. And not for this is because I'm right. No, this is more of a concept of this is something that is biblically based, even if you were just hearing it from a 1940s, 1960s, whatever theory. And then presenting that for people for their own consideration. Because I really like promoting the concept of one, dousing so I was talking to Stuart prior, dousing the concept of competitiveness within the West, because we have this very culture that is so focused. My team, my colors, my political party, they have to be in charge. This sports, pick a category. We're so focused on promoting competition that we're not thinking about cooperation
Mm-hmm.
and other little things of focusing on you being an individual. Like I said earlier, with even the concept of
Mm.
just the apology, because I think a lot of people, they think they're an individual. Sure, like if you ever seen Life of Brian, you are all individuals. Yes, we are all individuals. Go be your own people. Yes, but how do and they don't know how to do that because they
Yeah.
always want to follow and impose that upon somebody else. So what I would like to just start prompting, how do you do that as being a Christian And when you do have to align with anybody, you're doing it within the body of Christ because we're supposed to
Mhm.
strengthen the brethren,
Mhm.
right? And then before you start seeing brother and sister and you start taking a little bit more to heart, I have to care for you as much as I would care for myself. Yes, we can help others, but there's that special bond and that spiritual connection where the fellowship is very special and sweet. And whole
Mhm.
concept of communion, breaking bread. We only do that with those that have accepted. So, anyways, that's a concept I'm contemplating. When I would do it, I don't know. I'm most thinking doing like a late night thing because sometimes I'm up and I just want to talk and I got no one to talk to. So I do a little chat
Do
GPT
it. I
saying,
love
break this
that.
all down. And then I talk to everybody out there. Hopefully, that would accrue more funds too. So that would help me.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Cool, cool,
Yeah.
cool. Any other last comments, remarks, taxes, statism, being set apart?
I'm really struck by what you said earlier about like, somebody, you had a follower that she had in her profile picture a Christmas tree, and you're like, I just
That was
can't.
a
It's
he.
like, who?
That was a he, not a her.
Oh, a he. Okay, sorry.
Surprisingly
Yeah.
this time.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's cute. Yeah. Yeah. So, um, but I'm thinking about that, like, being in this world but not of it. Like, I don't know if I'm feeling a little convicted or something. Like, it's hard out, as we all know. It's hard out here. Like at Christmas time, I mean, it's swimming upstream. And yes, I
Yeah,
have the Spirit of Christ living in me. I understand all that, but it's like, I think my approach is like, I really like to develop relationship, and I do, like, I have several non-Christian friends, and like just over time, and then just like me going through some trials in my life, they're like, tell me about your God, like tell me about your faith,
right.
and it's slow, and it's like, yeah, well, anyway, so I think I kind of, maybe I teeter in that, and I don't know. I'm just kind of thinking about that, letting that simmer a little bit. Like, oh, maybe I don't have a strong enough boundary on that, and I want to walk carefully with my nephews who are so young and very impressionable, but they understand the Bible. They're like, they have some general knowledge, and my brother's Christian, but like I said, doesn't celebrate Christmas for those bad reasons, and so I have to carefully. And he's kind of quick to anger, and I just have to kind of walk
So,
just carefully
if I
with
may,
him.
and I'm not delaying the BAMES here, right?
No.
Okay, all right. Because I can answer that question. I think it's good, and I do appreciate when you guys do ask these questions, and I appreciate you also being open to recording because other people don't. Because when you're asking these questions, there are other people who are asking me questions,
Yes.
and they don't want to
Okay.
come on here. They don't want to show their face. So you asking that is very good. The way I
Okay,
see
good.
that, and I view those situations, as long as there's somebody still in the family that has potential to be reached, don't cut it off. What do I mean that? Well, for instance, my buddy Brian, I can't get through to him. Whether it's talking about his dog, you need to have some empathy. Don't put him in a cage or a kennel for 13 hours because that's going to do some trauma aspects to the dog. Then you yell at him and you tell him he's a bad boy when he's doing something outside the cage. Well, of course, he's been trapped and cooped up for so long. You
Oh,
don't have no empathy for putting yourself into the mind of an animal, just something on that nature. Do
okay.
you have no compassion for what's going on in Gaza? Doesn't seem to be able to register with that. So it's literally me going, why am I wasting my time trying to give this guy analogies? If you found your kid coming home from daycare in a rubble of bricks after a bomb was dropped, think October, Red October, if you will. Try to put
Oh,
yourself in that scenario. You come home,
yeah.
and that's what you find your little girl. Are you not going to be mad at the people who did this?
Mm,
No, no. So if you can't have empathy, well, how am I going to reach you? Reason
mm,
I'm staying. The wife is asking questions.
mm.
Okay, cool. So if the wife is asking questions, maybe I'll get her to look up a link, watch a video, do something of that concept. There for me, so it's like I'm able to tolerate it, even though they're not there. They're still asking questions about God.
Yeah.
Whether or not this grows into fruition, for me, I'm seeing somebody raising their hand. That means I can stick around a little bit longer. Right? It's worth my time because maybe that person, again, wife and husband, they're a lot closer to each other. Maybe she'll be able
Yeah.
to convey something that big words won't be able to explain
Mm.
via me. Maybe it'll be the wife, right? Because they're unequally yoked. But if I'm able to reach her with something, that's what I'll work with. So it's the same thing. If you have your nephews and they're still asking questions, maybe it'll be the nephews that will start prompting dad. And how is dad supposed to
Yeah.
get mad at his kids? Because it's like, I'm doing this all for you and the wonder of Christmas. And
Nice.
at a certain point, it goes, well, if the kids are telling me not to do it, dang it. And granted, they might get mad at you. They might say, don't talk to her anymore. But that's the risk that you take as being a Christian.
Yep.
I did it as long as possible. I did it through love, not manipulation. But
Mhm.
they were asking a question, and I gave what I had. Same thing with my buddy Jack. Doesn't want me to talk conspiracies. Yet it was his best friend, kept asking me to elaborate a little bit more. And I
Yeah.
told him that. I said I never elaborated unless I was asked the question, because I'm not
Uh-huh.
supposed to be bringing it up. Oh, did you know this conspiracy trivia fact? No, that's not the way I think of it. But if I'm asked, give an answer to every man that ask of the faith. That's what the same thing with the conspiracy quote, because that's how again it is identified with my faith. Have no part fruitless deeds of darkness, but rather expose them. Ephesians 5:11.
Okay. Yeah.
For
Yep.
me, if I'm asked the question, that means if you're thinking of the parable of the sower, that
Yep.
means somebody is receptive, the soil is ready.
All right.
Whether anything happens after that, I don't know. But the thing is, I was asked to either water or plant a seed. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. It does. It
You don't want to
helps.
waste time.
Hmm?
Well, you don't want to waste time because for me, churches have not established when we set the boundary. Usually there has to be a scandal these days within the church or a church split in order to set
Mm,
somebody apart. As
mm,
opposed to saying, okay, you said you want to be a Christian. Yeah, okay, but you're still living an old lifestyle. Now there's again, with some grace, think of it like it's a double A meeting. We understand you say you want to get away from alcohol, but you keep coming in here completely intoxicated, or we keep hearing you talk about this. It's been over a year.
uh-huh.
Are you showing that you have an incentive to want to change? There's going to be lapses. Do not get me wrong, and I'm not saying we go to a tier of like you just can't be unquestioned now because you said no, 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 you've gone so far. No, we have lapses, but
Mm,
we should be seeing a stronger effort on a barometer scale that you are actually making effort to change, as opposed to you're lapsing a lot. So if you have a broken wagon wheel, do you want to keep that wheel, or are you going to replace it with a brand new one?
mm,
Right? So understanding, are you worth the investment, or should I go and get a replacement? Same thing. So always think
mm.
of a car, if that helps.
Okay.
Do I need a
Oh,
new part, or can I wait for that, check engine thing? Maybe it's off. Maybe I just have to put the diagnostics thing, and I'll find out it's a goof with the computer. I'm misreading the situation of
wow.
the person that I'm perceiving. Gauge it like that. You'll know when.
All
Because
right.
I think the churches really have not established discipleship and also a gauging scale because it can also be incredibly exhausting when you're putting in so much effort into somebody and they don't want it.
Okay.
Bring a horse to water, they don't want to drink. I was telling
Yep.
that to my buddy the other day, and he keeps bringing this up. It's good that he does because he's so calm, but it helps me and it resonates. Christ was not able to reach everybody. He still only reached one last guy when on the cross. The other one, not so much. Still's got to throw that one little dig, even though you're in the same situation as him. You got to throw that one more dig at you, even on the way out. It says, if even you reach 1,000 people out of 1 billion, that's a huge drop in the bucket. 100 out of
Mhm.
1,000. It's a huge drop out of the bucket. But also knowing where to put that energy, spiritually speaking,
Okay.
you have right now, Renee, that's beautiful. The children. Christ loved children. Right? Suffer little children to come unto me. Why? They have a beautiful faith. It's simple. It's pure. It doesn't overthink the situation. It doesn't impose the traditions, a peer pressure of dead people on me. I just want to learn. I want to grow. I want to evolve. They don't overthink the situation. And if you're finding somebody that's asking those questions, that might be your means of witnessing to dad.
Very
Sorry. So,
good.
anyways,
That's really good. Thank you. Yeah.
yeah.
I
I
feel encouraged.
I know I sound like I'm going in a rant, but that's something that I've been actually taking away out of all this. It grieves my heart because I'm a people person, but I also have to learn to put restrictions and bridle myself from going 100% with everybody. until they've kind of proven themselves. Because if you
Mm,
keep doing that with every relationship, you're going to start taking away the key parts of what makes you humane. You're gonna so bear with me. So if you're here, if you're basically always giving 100% to everyone else, and no one ever returns that for you,
mm,
that becomes what did the guy phrase it as? A psychic parasite.
mhm,
Takes away from your mental calm. And I'm not
mm.
saying like no, no, I'm saying like
Yeah, I
you
know
just
what
your
you're saying.
mental calmness of how you perceive the world, because you're always thinking about somebody else's problems. And you're genuinely concerned, you're praying, you're putting an investment with this, you're trying to help this person, and then they hurt you. It's like, well, God, why am I wasting my time? And I think that's where as Christians we really need to start understanding what is worth my time, and how do I know when to cut it off and dust off my sandals, as it
Hmm.
were.
Yeah, you're right. Because as Christians, we're called to be servants, serve others, and I think we get it wrong oftentimes. We're doing it at
Serve
our expense.
There's servants, but there's also when Christ is talking about the slapping of the cheek, right?
Hmm.
Slap you on the left, turn it also to the right. Did you know that slaves were not supposed to look back at their master after they were slapped? When you did that, what were you saying?
Oh, you're kind of
We're equals here,
pushing
bud.
back. Oh, okay.
That's what you're basically declaring. So
Um,
it's like, hey, we're both human. Go for the other side as well. Now, that puts the slappee, and suddenly you start going, okay, uh, you're not supposed to do that. Do I execute you? Do I kind of think about the situation here? Because you now just undermine my authority by saying we're co-equal. Go ahead, hit the other side as well. It's basically almost presenting a duel. You want to hit that
okay.
side? Go hit the other side too.
Yep.
Whoa.
Okay.
So yes, you're a servant, but it's like, yeah, treat me with some respect because I don't have to be doing
Oh, that's a
this.
good. That's good. No, I like
Right.
that. Yeah,
And
that's
I
really
think
good.
that mentality, it's the same thing. Because I know this is going to sound kind of extreme to some people. But when you're reading about a lot of these people who are lamenting to God and stuff like that, or even this is one of my favorites is when Moses is saying, "Hey God, you can't punish them. You can't wipe out the people. Why? Tell me one good reason why I shouldn't. Because you made a promise." There's moments where you can get angry with God. There are moments where once in a while you have to say, "Hey, listen, I was reading your word the other day, and I'm not trying to manipulate this by any way, shape, or form. Ultimately, but I am also noticing that you said this in the Bible. What's your thoughts on it?" And it's not that you're defying God, it's more just saying, God, I'm reading this and I really want to align with this, but if this is what you say you do for your people, where are you?
Hmm.
Well, Brandon, that sounds really extreme. Father, why hast thou forsaken me? I think you're allowed moments
Mhm.
to ask those questions.
Yes, absolutely. He wants us to ask and push back and reason with
Yes,
him, right? Reason with him.
reason. Ask those questions because I think at a certain, again, that's part of the aspect of being in a relationship because somebody could be abusing you,
Yes.
but if you never articulate, I don't appreciate when you're doing this, or I feel like it's
Mhm.
manipulated, I feel like you're not hearing me on this aspect, right?
Excuse
You're
me.
being hurt in a relationship, but you never communicate. Oh, I didn't realize that. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And it's not that you're trying to force God to bend. It's just saying, I thought this was part of your ways. I'm just trying to see. Help me understand this. Help
Yep.
me understand this. Anyways,
Yep. I like it. Good stuff.
any other points? No? All right. Any other topics that you guys want to cover at a certain
Ooh.
point?
Mm,
I know, putting everybody
Let
on
me
the spot.
I know. Let me think about that. I mean, we have our little group online. Maybe we can brainstorm there or put some topics. Oh, and Stuart's saying something.
Uh-oh, a
Oh.
lengthy. Well, again, we'll probably. I'll
Oh, that's
read it, but I'll probably
probably
reply in our show because I don't like answering lengthy questions via.
yeah. I wonder if he's referring to the questions he has
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
earlier that he wants to talk to you directly. Yeah. Or,
Yeah,
I don't
again,
know.
because I don't also want to be the imposing my worldviews or opinions or authors and books. I also want it to be open to whatever you guys want to start delving into.
Okay.
Because again, maybe you guys have a different perspective or a different thing that you kind of want to vet. I get other people asking me stuff, and I'm like, I don't really watch and view all these other podcasters and content creators a lot of times because I'm busy reading, and that requires a
Yeah.
lot of time. And I try to do my best to give my overall analysis when it comes to presentations. So
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm going to be thinking of topics, and then I'm going to come to our little group chat.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
all right. Well, I'll close
Okay.
with a prayer if everybody's okay with that, and then you guys
Brilliant.
can all go.
Yeah.
I know we're ending earlier, so that's even better.
Look at us, two
I
hours.
think.
Nice.
Yeah, that's not too bad. Was that good for
Yeah,
everybody?
Yeah.
it is. It's
Okay,
really
cool.
nice.
Is this a good time usually for most people? Stuart aside, I know your schedule.
Yeah. Should be
Yeah.
fine.
Works for
Hmm.
Okay.
me.
Well, we'll see about next couple weeks. Going to be kind of over the place, but we'll see. We'll
Okay,
see. All right. Let's close with prayer.
great.
Dear Heavenly Father, we just want to thank you for this time of fellowship with the Ecclesia. We thank you, Lord, that you've given us minds and our own independent thoughts. We also appreciate that you give us people who give us commentaries on your word that bother to invest to understand the context and meaning of things, to give us a better application of how we are supposed to apply the world with those we come across and are around. We ask you, Lord, to let us resonate upon these things, to be a little bit more compassionate when we think about Judas and just people in general that we're trying to witness to, Lord. We ask you to give us patience and compassion and to just start viewing the world as you would see us to see it and being separate part from it. And all these things we ask in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. Thank you
All
so
right,
much, Brandon.
folks. This will probably be up in a week or so. We'll see.
All right.
But and again, if you have any questions on Patreon or you have a suggestion, um, don't write under a comment section. Try to DM me. That's
Okay.
because that I don't. It doesn't always pop up, but once that will send it usually to my email, and that's easier for me then to respond and go over. And if not, when I check my Patreon, that's you guys pop up as a little red dot in the left corner, so it's
Okay.
very easy to see. All right.
Okay. Sounds
Without any
good.
further ado, folks, I'll catch you all next time. Thanks for coming today.
Thank you so
Of
much,
course.
Brandon.